very much, Cahirlock, and want to thank deputies for the contributions they made here this evening about an issue that I know is very, very important for our country, a challenge that is affecting homes, households all over every community in our country this evening. But it is in recognition of this that the government has already acted. It is in understanding the challenges that many are facing that we have made so many changes already. And I do want to list out what they are again, because it is very important to remind the House of the scale of the measures that have already happened. In addition to the measures that were brought forward on Budget Day, tax changes, social welfare changes of just under €1 billion, the government has reduced the excise and fuel on diesel, on petrol and diesel. We have reduced the VAT on gas and electricity. We've brought in a €200 additional payment via an electricity credit to those who we know are affected by the rising cost of fuel. We've brought in 2 additional payments of over €200 to help those who are at risk of fuel poverty. So since the Dáil passed the budget last October, since the additional challenges have become more acute and more intense for so many, the government has brought forward measures of €1.4 billion, which we implemented quickly to help those as quickly as we can who are dealing with the rising cost of living. We absolutely understand that for families, for households, the rising cost of energy, the rising cost of food, the rising cost of other services is having a real impact on your purse and on your wallet. We understand that. And that is why, since we did our last budget, since we did that, we have brought in additional measures which are actually equivalent to an entire budget again of new measures. And those have been put in place because we recognise the challenge that we are facing right after having to deal with the economic, the social and the health consequences of dealing with a pandemic. And I experience in my own constituency, in people I meet with in my own community, the very strain that many opposition TDs have referred to here this evening. But it is in recognition of that we have put so many additional measures in place. Now, I do want to deal with some of the points that I know were raised this evening by opposition deputies in the debate. I want to deal with the points that were made regarding the ESRI and IFAC, and also the points that were made regarding where we are with our tax revenue at the moment, and the fact that for some taxes we are collecting of where we thought we would be at this point in the year. So to deal with the quotations that have been made here this evening regarding what the ESRI and the Irish Fiscal Advisory Council have said, it is correct to say that they are organisations that have made the case for additional interventions to help our country deal with the cost of living, and they have acknowledged some flexibility that is there to do it. But the ESRI also in the same report said the following: in light of the pressures which they're referring to in terms of the challenges that are outside of our economy at the moment, it is evident that fiscal policy will have to be particularly prudent over the coming years. I didn't hear much reference to that in the debate here this evening. They also made the point that given the challenges that our economy and state could face in the time ahead, that a portion of the receipts that we could gain in the future from corporate tax and other forms of tax collection, it may, they said, be prudent to deploy those receipts towards long-term investment activities or other forms of savings. IFAC, also quoted here this evening, said that the risks around the path for the public finances are unusually wide. The space for funding new initiatives on a sustainable basis is very limited. So the reports, the research organisations, IFAC, who were quoted earlier on here, did acknowledge the space for interventions to help with the cost of living, but they also acknowledged that the risks that we are facing, the challenges that are there, do also make the case for a careful approach with regard to our public finances in the time ahead. And the point that's been made of tax receipts about where we are, to argue on one hand that people will spend less, and then on the other hand to say that our public finances will remain healthy indefinitely, is inconsistent. If on one hand many are arguing, and they have good cause to argue it, that rising costs are affecting the standard of living and people are therefore spending less, that is a change that, were it to happen over many weeks, many months, many years even in the time ahead, of course would then have an effect on where our public finances are. You can't on one hand say we expect and acknowledge that people are spending less due to a rising cost of living, and on the other hand say, well, our public finances are in good condition, we can expect they're going to be in good condition for the time ahead, we should do more emergency budgets. The two things are inconsistent. And that is why the government is so aware that if we are going to intervene, we do have to get the balance right. We have to get the balance right between intervening to help today, but at the same time not creating new problems and new risks tomorrow, including potentially adding to the inflationary pressures that we are facing at the moment, or even creating new risks and new challenges in our public finances, which means that we could face the risk that measures that we bring in today, we have to undo tomorrow. Our country went down that path before. It's not so long ago people were saying to me, how are we going to pay for all the additional debt that we incurred during the era of COVID? It's not so long ago we were having these debates in this House regarding the need to spend more due to COVID, which did result in an additional €32 billion worth of debt. That debt is there. It is a factor in decisions that we've made. And I accept your point, Deputy, regarding the impact that inflation will have on our debt dynamics. I think that's the point you would have went on to make. But it's also the reason why the interest rate on new borrowing is going up. It's the other side of the coin that you are raising. And if we are in an environment in which the interest rate for borrowing is going to go up in the future, it's gone up from just below zero, just above zero on January the 1st, to just under 2.5% this evening. That's a change that has happened. And that is also a factor that I, at least, and the government has to take account in the decisions that we make ahead. It's about the need for this balance. And I put it to you, Cathaoirleach, that this balance is not present in what the opposition are putting forward here this evening. If I was to bring in an emergency budget here this morning, I've no doubt here that by tonight the opposition would be condemning it for not being enough. No doubt whatsoever. If I was to come into this House tomorrow morning with the emergency budget the opposition are looking for, by lunchtime they would be saying the government need to do more. The government would be saying this latest intervention from the government, the opposition would be claiming it's not enough, we need more, we need another emergency budget next week. Now that may work as an opposition tactic, but it doesn't work with the risks, the challenges that our country could have to confront in the time ahead, and acknowledging that having come through a pandemic, we have come through a pandemic and got our country back to a place of a level of employment that would have looked so unlikely even a year ago, and public finances that are recovering. And why did we do that, Cathaoirleach? We did that because during the pandemic we tried to make decisions that would get the balance right between acknowledging the need to intervene now, but also acknowledge that there will be costs, that there will be other issues, other needs we would need to respond back to tomorrow. We got that balance right during the pandemic. We are now in a very, very changed time. We're in very, very different circumstances with new risks, new opportunities and new issues around our country. And we have to take that into account in decisions that we are making. So yes, we know the challenge that many are facing. We know the rising anxiety. We know the rising worry. It's why the government isn't talking about intervening in 2022. It's why we've already intervened so many times in 2022. And when we come to our budget for 2023, it will contain additional measures for this year to help this year, to help in a winter that we accept and know will be difficult for so many. But, Cathaoirleach, we have to get the balance right between intervening to help today and also doing our best to avoid further risks, further challenges tomorrow, which, even if aren't that big of a concern for the opposition here this evening, are something the country would be concerned about and is something the government has a duty to manage and respond to. Thank you.